When I say silver, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Maybe your grandmother's fancy dinner spoons? Or maybe old pirate coins? For centuries, that's what silver was. Money and jewelry. It was the second best gold. But in the last 20 years, something huge changed. Silver stopped just being shiny, and it started being essential. You can't run the modern world without it. It's in the phone in your pocket. It's in the computer you're watching this on. And most importantly, it is the absolutely critical ingredient for the future of green energy, especially solar power. Now imagine if one country controlled a massive chunk of the supply chain for that essential metal. And then imagine one day, they decided they wanted to keep most of it for themselves. Well, we don't have to imagine it. It's happening right now with China. China has quietly started putting very hard restrictions on sending silver out of their country. They are tightening the screws on exports. This isn't just boring trade news. This is a move that could make electronics more expensive, slow down the global fight against climate change, and it signals a major shift in the global power game. Today, we're going to break down exactly why China is hoarding silver and why it matters to everyone watching this. Let's dive in. So what actually happened? Recently, observers in the precious metals market noticed something weird. It was getting harder to get silver out of China. The Chinese government has been using things like strict export quotas and difficult licensing processes to limit how much silver leaves their borders. It's not a total ban, but it's like turning a wide open water faucet down to a slow drip. Why is this shocking? Because for years, China was a massive supplier to the world. They process a huge amount of silver, both from their own mines and from stuff they import, refine, and then sell. But now the workshop of the world is saying, actually, we need to keep this. To understand why, we first need to understand why silver isn't just about necklaces anymore. Silver has a secret superpower. It is the best conductor of electricity and heat of all the metals. Better than copper, better than gold. If you want electricity to move from point A to point B fast and efficiently, silver is the best way to do it. In the past, industry used a little bit of silver. Today it uses a massive amount. Think about your car. An old gas car from the 1980s used very little silver. A modern electric vehicle, it's loaded with it. Every sensor, every screen, every connection in the battery management system relies on silver contacts. Think about the Internet of Things, smart thermostats, smart fridges, 5G towers. They all need silver to work efficiently. But the biggest game changer, the thing that is really driving this whole story, is solar energy. To turn sunlight into electricity, solar panels use photovoltaic cells. To get that electricity out of the cell and into the wire, they use a paste made of silver. Right now, the solar industry is exploding globally, and that industry is one of the hungriest consumers of silver on the planet. So keep that in mind. Silver is no longer just precious, it is industrial, and the country that dominates industry is China. Which brings us to the first big reason for these restrictions. The simplest reason China is keeping its silver is that they desperately need it themselves. China has gone all in on green energy. They aren't just trying to participate in the green revolution. They want to own it. Over the last decade, China has built a solar manufacturing monster. They produce roughly 80% of the world's solar panels. That is a staggering monopoly. If the whole world wants to switch to solar power, which it does, they mostly have to buy from China. But to build 80% of the world's panels, China needs a massive amount of that silver paste we talked about. In the past, China would import raw silver, refine it, maybe make some jewelry for export, and sell the excess refined metal to Europe or America. Now, their domestic solar factories are knocking on the door saying, hey, we need all of that. Don't send it away. Imagine a bakery that used to sell flour to other towns. Suddenly, the bakery decides it wants to become the world's biggest cake manufacturer. They are going to stop selling the flour because they need every grain of it to bake their own cakes. China is the bakery, silver is the flour, and solar panels are the cakes. The demand within China for industrial silver has grown so fast that it is catching up to their supply. They are restricting exports because they are terrified of running out at home, which would stall their massive solar ambitions. They are prioritizing their own factories over the rest of the world. If domestic demand was the only reason, this would just be a boring business story. But there is a deeper, darker layer to this. Geopolitics, the big chess game between global superpowers. We are living in an era of resource nationalism. For a long time the world worried about oil. Who controlled the oil controlled the economy. Today it's about critical minerals. These are the metals needed for high-tech weapons, computers, and green energy. Silver is on that list. Think about the current tension between the United States and China. The US has been blocking China from buying the most advanced computer chips, trying to slow down their tech and military development. China doesn't like this, and China is looking for ways to fight back. What does China have that the West needs? Critical minerals. We already saw this happen recently with two other obscure metals, gallium and germanium. These are used in high-tech chip making. China produces most of them. When the chip war got hot, China suddenly restricted exports of those two metals. It was a warning shot. It was China saying, you squeeze us on chips, we squeeze you on the stuff you need to make chips. Many experts believe the silver restrictions are part of this same playbook. By controlling the flow of silver, China gains leverage. If they restrict silver, it hurts Western companies that needed to build electronics or their own solar panels outside of China. It's a way of saying, we control the building blocks of the future economy. Treat us accordingly. It's weaponizing the supply chain. So China is keeping its silver to feed its own solar beast and to gain political leverage. What does that mean for the rest of us? There are three main consequences. First, the obvious one. Prices go up. When the world's biggest supplier restricts access, there is less silver available globally. When supply goes down and demand is still going up, prices rise. This means it could cost more to manufacture everything from iPhones to Teslas. Eventually, those costs get passed down to you, the consumer. Second, it could slow down the green energy transition in the West. The US and Europe are desperately trying to build their own solar panel factories, so they aren't so dependent on China. But if they can't get enough silver paste at a good price, those factories become harder to build and run profitably. It makes it harder for the West to catch up to China in green tech. Third, it sets off a global scramble for new sources. Countries are now rushing to find silver elsewhere. In Mexico, Peru, and Australia. They are also desperate to figure out recycling. How do we get the silver out of old solar panels and old phones efficiently? Whoever figures out how to recycle silver cheaply is going to be very rich in the next 10 years. The story of China restricting silver isn't just about a metal. It's about a massive shift in how the world works. For 30 years, the deal was simple. The West designed the tech and China built it using cheap labor and easily accessible resources. That deal is over. China isn't just a factory anymore. They want to be the designer, the builder, and the owner of the resources. They realized that in the 21st century, controlling the physical stuff, the actual atoms needed to build the future, is the ultimate power. Silver is just one piece on the board, but it's a very valuable piece. And right now, China is holding onto it tight. What do you think? Is China just being smart about protecting its own industries? Or is this a dangerous move in a global trade war? Let me know down in the comments below.